Welcome back to the Two Promises Podcast. Let's dive right into another exciting adventure with BD and crew as he pursues his new passion of one day finding the most epic bourbon. The Two Promises team send their special thanks to Hobie and the Huckleberries for their masterful theme music. So grab a glass, relax, and enjoy responsibly.
Baby says she's leaving if I don't stop drinking wine. So I switched to whiskey, now I'm feeling fine. Drinking that smooth whiskey. No more wine. I like straight bourbon. Baby, you try the ride.
Okay, welcome back, everyone. Glad to have you all here on the Two Promises Podcast. And I am very excited to introduce a very special guest, a mentor of mine, Mr. Dennis Bollier. And he has a very diverse background and experience. He's been an entrepreneur in multiple industries. He began his career as an Army veteran. He was a forward air traffic controller. He was an air traffic controller in the Army, and then he went in to become a civilian airline pilot. Very niche and demanding job, a lot of requirements there. After that, he created and ran a very successful real estate investment company. He was an adjunct professor at the Graduate School of Public Health, and he's currently the owner-operator of a company called Employee Health Matters, where they focus on consulting work to reduce absenteeism and sick days by focusing on improving the workforces and their families' overall health and well-being. Absolutely phenomenal individual, a heart of gold, super helpful, and I'm really excited that he's here with us to share his experience and help us get through some of our sticking points, ups and downs that we're all going to experience in life. Dennis, welcome to the show.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
So if you don't mind just kind of introducing yourself as well to our listeners, telling them a little bit about your story in your words, maybe where you started, what drove you to get started in that individual career pursuit, why you transitioned and why you moved on.
Very willing to do that. I'm a kid from Stratford, Connecticut. Lousy athlete, but I made 3 varsity teams, swimming, track, and football.
All-American.
There you go. Yeah. And I love mom and apple pie, too.
Yeah.
So from high school, I went on to University of Bridgeport, which is the next town over. My parents did not have the money to send me to college. They sent my older sister, and then they ran out of money for me. So I had to figure out my own way, which to me was a good learning point in my life, that you can always create your own way if all the other doors are closed. So that was the first time I came up against that roadblock. I lived at home with my mother and father, and I still hung out with my buddies from high school. The commute was only about 20 minutes away to University of Bridgeport. Did 4 years there, got a Bachelor of Science in Business. I was from a very, very poor background, probably one of the poorest kids on all the 3 athletic teams, one of the poorest kids in high school, but my family was very, very happy. My mother and father, I don't think ever once raised their voice to each other. There was such mutual love and respect, and you can't find that today. That's so rare. But I relished that safe environment with them and missed them terribly. They're both gone now, but I miss them both terribly. Real quickly, I'll tell you about coming up from the ashes. My father, when he came to this country from Switzerland, he was 23 years old. He was the oldest of 3 brothers in a small town outside of Zurich, Switzerland. His father died when he was very, very young. So my father had to quit like a freshman year in high school equivalent and go to work, support his mother and his 2 kid brothers. And that was an example that I learned from the example he set for me, that no matter what, no matter how broke you are, figure out a way, get things settled and controlled, and then move on. So once he got them all settled and what have you, he finally left Switzerland, came to this country at 23 years old, and started his new life. He was a champion ballroom dancer in Europe. He was a gymnast, a real jock, but no education. So here he is in Stratford, Connecticut, married to my mom, my older sister. I come along, and I noticed every once in a while, I would say to my mother, "What's that big black car outside?" Now, I didn't know it was the mafia or what, because I was old enough to start watching that sort of stuff on TV. She said, "No, that's the ambassador to the United Nations from Switzerland, or that's the head of the Swiss bank or whatever." And the reason they would come to visit my father in his little hovel in Stratford, Connecticut, little quarter-acre lot, is that he looked around and he saw that the Italians have the Italian Community Center concept. The Germans had their own clubs across the country. The Irish had their own clubs. Nobody had a Swiss club. So I said, "Well, let's fix that. I'll start one." So he did. That club today is nationwide.
Wow.
So he became very cherished, if you will, by big people in Switzerland. So they would always come and visit with him. A very poor man, uneducated, but he's got these big kahunas coming to visit him. And that also very impressed me, because literally he came from nowhere and he created a very respectful and respected existence as an uneducated man. So that was my first introduction to, you can fix stuff if you're not happy with the way things are.
That is really great to hear. And it really shows me where you came about your charisma and your networking abilities. I would say you're an incredible networker and you do a very great job communicating to people. So it makes a lot more sense now. You had a very great example who took that nationwide.
I did. My mother was the same way. Although she was uneducated as well, she was so loved and cherished by everybody that ever met her. She was just the warmest person in the history of the world. I mean, she's just a phenomenal woman. So I had that great anchor coming up through the years. When I got out of college, 1966, I volunteered for the Army, and I was either going to go fight in Vietnam or see if what were my options? So one option would be, I always wanted to be an airline pilot. So I was going to go in as a pilot, Navy pilot, Air Force pilot, whatever. But then they were napalming villages almost live on TV. I mean, they would do it in the afternoon. You see it at 6 o'clock news. That meant killing women and children as part of your mission. That's the collateral damage. I said to my father, there's no way I could do that. I mean, flying is in my heart. That's really what I want to do, is drive that airplane around. But I can't perform that kind of mission. And that was the daily thing. They were, they had a suspected Viet Cong in a village. They wiped out the whole village. So he said, well, if that's your orders, I mean, you got to follow them up. I said, well, then let's take pilot off the list. I volunteered. Now I'm in my induction physical, which we all go through. The doctor said, you're 4F. I said, what do you mean 4F? For those who don't know what that means, it means you're physically unfit to serve. I said, what are you talking about? I played 3 sports. He said, well, you got the worst feet I've ever seen. You got absolutely flat feet, caved in arches, and I was born that way. It's kind of a little bit of a birth defect. I mean, the average person wouldn't notice it looking at my feet, but he said, holy cow, I've never seen feet this bad. He said, you cannot do a 25-mile forced march with an 80-pound pack and a weapon, all that sort of stuff. You're going to absolutely ruin your posture, your knees, everything. And more than likely, the first thing that's going to happen is your feet. If they don't happen right away, you're going to have very bad feet when you're later in life. Well, now, so I said to him, now, I don't want you to put it down. I'm going to serve. He said, this is war. What's the matter with you? Guys are shooting themselves in the foot, saying there's a hunting accident. They're going to Canada. They're running away, burning their draft cards. I said, my father served. I'm going to serve. No matter what you say, I will find a way to stand up for my flag. So he said, that's your call. So I did serve. I was talking to a recruiter in the Army. When you take an induction physical, that doesn't mean the next morning you ship off. You wait until an assignment is given to you. So I'm waiting, and I talked to a recruiter. He said, you know what I could do? You want to be an airline pilot? He said, I can get you into an air traffic control school in the Air Force in Biloxi, Mississippi. I mean, you've committed now to the Army, but the Air Force trains Air Force, Marines, Navy, and Army guys at Keesler Air Force Base, because Vietnam was exploding in numbers, and we couldn't get air traffic controllers fast enough. So that school I went to was 24 hours a day, 3 shifts. So I said, that would be right up my alley as an airline pilot. And if I get called to active duty, fine. So I did that. And that was the Army part of my life. That was 6 years of weekend drills and 2 weeks in the summertime away at camp and whatever. Then I began to feel very guilty that that's all that I did for my country. I didn't serve. I didn't fight. My life was never challenged. Well, except once I got mugged in the Army, but fought my way out of it.
Do you want to share that story?
Sure.
All right.
Sure. Brad, you'll appreciate this. Everybody remembers their kindergarten teacher and their drill sergeant, their names. So I had Mrs. Marcinson in kindergarten, and I'm going on 81, so I still remember her, and Sergeant Landry in basic training. So what that was all about was because I was the oldest, I was 23. All the other poor guys, they were all draftees. They had no choice what they were going to do. They're going to Vietnam. I was like the grandfather of the whole group. They're all 18 years old, and I'm 23. The only guy with a college degree. So Landry said to me, come here. He said, you're going to be my platoon guide, first platoon. He said, 240 guys, 4 platoons, 60 guys each. You're the first guy, and you're going to march everywhere and run everywhere and force march everywhere right next to me. You cannot lay back. And if you do, I'm going to kill you. So, that's when they used to be able to talk really tough to you. But anyway, I was platoon guide, first platoon. I was threatened by a couple of guys that I had to push a little harder than I would have liked to. One guy was, name was Corliss. I still remember the guy. Big guy, 18 years old, farmer, Arkansas. And this drill sergeant had me ride this guy's tail a lot. And I said, Sarge, he's got to kick the crap out of me one of these days. He said, deal with it. Figure your way out of it. You're the leader. Okay. So Corliss said to me one day, he said, you better sleep with one eye open. I said, okay. That's all I needed, because that meant he's going to sneak up on me. And, I'll never know what hit me. Mm-hmm. We have what's called an entrenching tool. It's a shovel with a very sharp pointed blade, and it folds back up to its handle. So I had that under my sheet. The first night he came over to me, and he said, Bollier, and he's already got this, he's wound up. He's going to hit me. He just wanted me to know who hit me. So I took a swing with the entrenching tool. And I'm glad I missed him, but it would have been a very devastating blow to him. Now he realizes this little guy is a maniac. I better be careful of him. So that was the story with me and Corliss. I did the 6 years in the reserves. Meanwhile, I got hired. I started flying back and forth to South America to build hours to fly for an airline. And we had a horrible incident. There was one airplane, big, huge C-46. If you know what a DC-3 is, the C-46 is 4 times bigger. We were flying baby chicks and sheep to the 3 Guyanas, British, French, and Dutch Guyana in South America. And then coming back, we were bringing back tropical fish in these styrofoam boxes and bags of water. There were only 2 co-pilots and 2 captains. I was a co-pilot, and there was one trip they couldn't get a hold of me because I had just gotten hired by the largest regional carrier in the country as a co-pilot. So I was off training, and I didn't get a chance to call them yet. This thing happened. They wanted me to report for training the next day. So they were leaving messages for me on my on my voicemail in West Palm Beach where I lived, and I was over in Sarasota training. I got back, and there's all these messages from Kimex was the name of the company, Kimex. Where are you? Pete's sick. He can't take the trip out. We need you desperately. Unfortunately, I didn't know. Here's where I gave a sermon at church about fate, luck, and a God moment. This was, as I see it, fate. Pete took the trip out because he couldn't get a hold of me, but he was sick. That plane crashed in the jungle.
Wow.
They just about got up to altitude, and then they lost an engine, and they were way overweight.
Wow.
That kind of flying back in the 60s, they had very few rules. In Africa, South America, Central America, you just, load the plane up as much as you can and hope at the end of the runway you can get airborne.
And then you got weather conditions, I'm sure, over mountains and different terrains. And
Yeah. So, I mean, I loved it because it was very, very challenging. But anyway, the plane crashed in the jungle, and he lived through the crash, but he died on a gurney in an emergency room, some jungle hospital.
Wow.
So, but that's fate. That would have been me because it was my trip to take out. Who knows? How do you figure that out? I can't say that was luck because luck killed somebody else instead of me. I don't see that as being lucky.
Understood.
It's just the way fate worked. I did get hired by Eastern Airlines. They're no longer around, but very, very large regional carrier, primarily in the East. And the captain who hired me, I still remember his name, Captain Young. He said, Dennis, it does my heart good to see a guy like you because you paid your dues. You had no way out other than paying your dues, learning how to fly, paying all your flight time, and flying cargo to South America for free just to build hours. I mean, you really, really done it all on your own. You created your path. And he said, that does my heart good because a lot of these guys come back to Vietnam and they kind of fling a resume at me, and not to discredit those guys, but he said a lot of them are a little too arrogant and they got a chip on their shoulder. He said, you paid your dues. And he said, it does my heart good to tell you right here and now. I'm not supposed to tell you first interview, but you're hired. We're not going to be putting a class through for about another 2 months, but he said, hang in there. I'm going to put you in our first class. Usually a flight class for an airline is, 20, 30 guys. A month later, his secretary calls me. She said, our Captain Young feels terrible about what I have to tell you, but you've been taken out of the class because Frank Borman just came out of the astronaut program and is now our vice president of flight operations. And he has put out a directive to all the chief pilots. Nobody gets hired with Eastern Airlines unless they flew in Vietnam. So he said, there's a few guys like you. I had to take you guys out of the classes. You're not going to fly for Eastern, period. Full stop. Then right after that, I got hired by TWA. They're also closed, shut down now. But they were the world carrier along with Pan Am. They flew me out to Kansas City for the interview as a pilot. I opened the door to go for my interview, and the guy, the head of HR, looked exactly like me. I thought I was looking in a mirror. So he looks at me, I look at him, holy cow, this is odd. And he was a very, very nice guy. We had a wonderful instant rapport, very comfortable to talk with. After seeing my logbooks and my flight experience, whatever, he said basically the same things that Captain Young said to me. I'm really happy to tell you, I'm not supposed to tell you right now, but you're hired. And our first class will be in about 2 or 3 months. Okay, fine. He called me himself about a month and a half later. He said, Dennis, I got the worst news for you.
Man.
We just got hit with, I think it's called an affirmative action suit, where we have no blacks, no Hispanics, and no female pilots. We're canceling all white guys out of the whole program. Okay. Everybody's gone. And we have to hire now to bring our quotas up, black, Hispanic, and female. I have no problem with that. They should have sexy classes and what have you as pilots, which they do today. But they could have kept some of us in some of these classes with a few here, a few there, and not ruin our career.
Right.
But that was the first reverse discrimination situation I ever got involved with. I got on the short end of it, and I didn't know what to do about it. So I said, well, there goes my career with TWA. Next, I got hired by, I guess the theme of this whole thing, Brett, that you want me to bring out is when things go bad, keep going. And I just kept going.
Absolutely.
I got that from my father. So the next one was Northwest Orient. Randall Breezy, I remember he was the HR guy. And same thing, he said, you got a very, very impressive flight record here, all the hours you've thrown in. And by then I had been flying commercially for this regional carrier, but I wanted to fly for one of the major airlines. I'd already made captain with the regional carrier. So I had a lot of good jet time, what have you. So he put me in a class. That was the beginning of 1973. In 1973, a little later on, we had the fuel crisis, where the Iranians went up to $140 a barrel for oil. The airlines were laying off pilots, shutting down routes, downsizing because of the cost of fuel. So, of course, all the classes with all the airlines were canceled for several years. Then I got hired by Seaboard World. I would have been right seat co-pilot in a 747 based in Frankfurt. The guy who hired me for that was the chief pilot, And he lived in Stratford, about 15 minutes from where I grew up. So I went to see him. He and I had a mutual friend from Stratford. He's come on over to see me one of these days. He just give me a heads up. Usually Saturdays, I'm washing the car in the driveway. So I went over to see him like that following next Saturday. He's washing the car. He looked at my logbook. He says, "Oh, look at all the jet time you got. Holy cow. How old are you?" So I told him, by then I was, I don't know, 25. So he hired me. And not long after that, Seaboard World was bought out by another airline. He didn't know that was coming. That was at the board of directors level and
Right.
money people, organizers and that. So, well, this class got canceled because the combined airline downsized tremendously. And there was one other, I mean, I could go on with this. There was one other airline, but, I said, maybe God doesn't want me to be an airline pilot. Something.
It sounds like a lot of this occurred over a fairly condensed time frame. So about 2-3 years, it sounds like?
Yeah, maybe 4. Yep.
4. Okay.
Yeah.
Did you have a family during this time, or were you
No.
a lone wolf?
Unfortunately, I had 3 very, very long romances, about 5 years each. The first woman I was madly in love with, but I was cheating on her. I was an idiot. I was far too immature to marry this woman. And I realized that. So I finally said, I can't do this to you because I still have a lot of giddy up to go yet. It would not be fair to you. So I stood up like a man and I said, I can't do this. Next girl, lovely girl, but unfortunately hate to say this about her, not very intelligent. I'm thinking constantly, geopolitical stuff and politics and engineering. I'm always thinking, what's next? And I had no challenge intellectually with her whatsoever. I loved her dearly. But I said, I'm going to be bored the rest of my life if I married her. Horrible thing to say about somebody, but she had no education. She was a flight attendant, no college. The third woman I dated was a flight attendant, extremely glamorous, beautiful girl, flirtatious. She would never cheat on me, but very, very flirtatious. Guys just flocked to her at a bar. Anywhere she went, they just flocked around her. And she drank too much. So we went off to Marshall's to get something for her. I don't know what the heck it was. And let's go get a 6-pack. 10 o'clock in the morning, got a 6-pack. So she started drinking in the car. And again, I said, we've been together 5 years. She and I traveled the world, Hong Kong, Singapore, Africa, went everywhere. But she could not stop drinking. And I said, this is a dark road I'm about to head on if we get married. Extremely wealthy. I mean, so crazy. That's another story. Her family. There was about 18 years right there between those 3 women. I had stayed single till I was, which I'll be getting to here in a moment, how that happened. When Seaboard World turned me down finally because they had downsized, I took a job with a national airline and reservations, and quickly got a couple of promotions in their 800-person reservations office. And I hated the job, but they got a reputation of promotion from within. So I figured, well, sooner or later, I'll become a pilot. The manager of that office took a liking to me. He said, look, I know everybody down there. They started hiring again. They had 500 people with the company with some flying experience. And I'm almost done with the story, by the way, Brent. You could tell I love to talk.
It's great. It's great.
They whittled that down. Obviously, I stayed in the running. Then they were down 175 pilots, then 100 pilots, then 75, then 50, and then 25, and down to 15. So they were going to hire 15 out of 500, and I was one of the 15.
Wow, that is some attrition right there.
Well, it's like SEAL training. That first class is pretty big. You end up with 37 guys out of 150. So there's something about the guy who stays with it. And I just was not going to leave. I just stayed with it. The next round, maybe I'll get cut, but so what? I'm going to stay with it. I go down to corporate for the final interview, and the interviewer says to me, have you ever been arrested or convicted of a crime? I said, no. Pause. He said, let me ask you again. Have you ever been arrested or convicted of a crime? He said, no. He said, now I found out later that they have to ask you this 3 times. You have to lie 3 times. He said, he asked me the same question. I said, I've never been arrested or convicted of anything. He said, August 1970, assault and battery. I said, holy cow. Let me explain to you what that was. I was not arrested, nor was I convicted. I had a landlady who was a very disgusting, woman who had her hands all over me every time she'd see me, and she gave me a haircut once, and I would felt like I was raped. She was known to the police. I signed a lease in her building. There was a beauty salon, and she lived above me. Air conditioning didn't work. Refrigerator didn't work. I was there one month, and I had to get out of there. So I called my lawyer, and he said, well, just let her know that, nothing works. And if she can't fix the stuff, then, you're giving her whatever the law was back then in Massachusetts, 2 weeks or 3, 4 weeks, whatever. So I did. I was flying at the time, came home from a trip, and there's a note under my door, an eviction notice. So I walked around outside into her beauty salon, and she's standing in a room with her lawyer and no one else around. And I got into a shouting match with her lawyer. He was one of these, my wife's a lawyer, but I can say the good lawyers and then there's the low-life lawyers. This guy was a real crumb. So I took him on orally, and we got into it. Told him all the complaints I had. And all of a sudden, next thing I know, I'm on the floor. She hit me with a roundhouse right to my jaw.
Wow.
You know those big cone heads things they did, hair dryers for women back in the day?
Yeah.
I got 3 of those over. I mean, she knocked me right off my feet.
Wow.
He was about 450 pounds. Just a disgusting person.
Wow.
So I said to her lawyer, you're going to be my witness. I'm taking her to court for, this is assault and battery. You understand that, right? And he said nothing. And I went back to my apartment, called my lawyer. He said, get to court right away. Because if she gets there before you and said, you hit her, now you got a problem. So I go to jump in my car, and she had already left with her lawyer, and her manager's car was blocking the driveway and me in the back lot. I couldn't get out.
Ugh.
You can see what's about to happen here.
Right.
So I finally get to court later that afternoon. The court clerk, Mr. White, Ed White, he said, I'm not going to take your complaint. We already have one complaint. Just let the judge figure it out. Get out of here. A real jerk. Now, this is a very small court in East Boston, and very, very old boy network. All the lawyers, the judges, the clerks, they all know each other. I'm coming in as an outsider. So my lawyer said, I'm a small lawyer in that circle, but what you need is a big law firm to come in there and blow this thing sky high. So he sent me to my brother's law firm in Boston. She wanted me to pay her $800 to drop the charges. I said, I'm not going to pay anything. You assaulted me. So the law firm I went to called her lawyer. He said, do you have anything you can use against her? I said, yeah, she doesn't report rental income. So she's screwing the IRS. He said, how do you know that? I said, well, she won't give me a receipt for cash. She won't take a check. She won't take a money order. Everything's cash, and I have no records of, even if I want to use rent receipts for tax purposes, I can't use them because she won't give me any. He said, perfect. He calls her lawyer. He said, just so you know, I'm just from Brothers Law Firm. We're going to be representing Dennis Bollier and in the case against so-and-so. And when he leaves my office right now, he's on his way down to the IRS office. He's going to report your client for tax evasion. She won't give him any receipts. Correct. And then so she won't, so that's the end of the $800 she wants to hit him up for, to bribe him. So the $800 was checked off. I didn't have to pay anything. The court, we did have to go to court because there was a complaint against me. No arrest, nothing.
Mm-hmm.
And the 2 lawyers reached what's called an accordance satisfaction. That means that this crime never happened. Both parties agreed to absolve each other, and that's the end of it. So there's no way to proceed forward. So that was the end of it. And I said to my lawyer, I still want to fly for the airlines. Is this discoverable? He said, no, an accordance satisfaction is a sealed verdict. It keeps people protected. Well, here we are 8 years later.
Right.
So he said, 1970, it's all matter. I said, oh my God. He said, we have very good investigators. So I told him what happened. He said, well, you should have told them when you got hired in reservations. I said, I did tell the truth. I was not arrested or convicted of any crime in my lifetime. Nowhere was I asked, have you ever been charged with anything? So I felt I was given the God's honest truth. Well, that was the end of my career with that company.
Wow.
So I finally said, you know what?
Wow.
I'm done. I know when enough is enough. what I was doing, Brent, on the outside, waiting those few years in reservations, was investing in real estate. And I became very, very successful in the Boston area.
That's excellent.
And I was making more money in my real estate, rental income and whatever, than I was making for this airline and reservations. I hated the job, but it had benefits and everything else. So I finally decided I'm going to have to get out of here. And we had for lack of a better term, Brent, a Nazi who, somebody I reported to. He hated Jews, blacks, Hispanics, gays. It was the most despicable man I've ever met in my life. And he worked his way somehow secretively up through the ranks of management with this company. And the people that reported to me as their superior were begging me for years, can't you do anything about him? Because they knew I was the only person that had the, to confront them.
Right.
So I confronted him a couple of times, and then they demoted me, then I got fired. So, in other words, shoot the messenger. So I said, I'm tired of being disappointed by influences outside of my life. Why don't I just create my own future, which is what I finally did with real estate. And I got myself up to about $7 million in real estate, 126 units. I was just about to buy another 110-unit building on the water in Swampscott, Mass. And then one day, I did a favor to a friend whose kid brother just got off the boat from Ireland. And I gave him a job driving my company van. Second day on the job, he gets broadsided, gets pushed up onto a sidewalk, and crushes a jogger up against the wall.
Oh, no.
First, they thought she was dead. Then they were going to cut off a leg. Then they saved it, but it's 4 inches shorter than the other leg. She had internal injuries, never going to be able to have children. And she was facially disfigured by my side view mirror, which hit her in the face. And she was a professional model.
Oh, my goodness.
Well,
when it rains, it pours.
her life is over. So they sued the person who ran the stop sign right in front of a cop. She was indigent. It was my vehicle that actually hit the person, not that it was our fault, but my wife, when she got out of law school, she did insurance litigation. And she said what they do is they gather up all of the insurance documents they could find and see where there's some assets somewhere that they could go after. So they went after me. And I lost everything. Everything.
Wow. That is absolutely wild.
Thank you for joining us today on this curious roller coaster of life. If this is your stop, please exit peacefully. Enjoy the rest of your day. If you're ready for another one, just push play. Just a final note before you go, thank you. And thank you for feeling. The distillation and aging process is different for everyone. I'm not quite sure what you're ready for. Sip slowly and enjoy responsibly.
Baby says she's leaving if I don't stop drinking wine. So I switched to whiskey, now I'm feeling fine. Drinking that smooth whiskey.